Hey guys, it's David from Automotive Press. Guess what? I have two of my favorite cars right behind me. This is my own Toyota Land Cruiser, which is a first edition, new for 2024. And I have right here, new for 2025, Toyota 4Runner, a model that I love so much because I've owned so many different versions of the 4Runners in the past. But this time I have the 4Runner Platinum, which has a 2.4 liter turbo hybrid, exactly same engine that's in my Land Cruiser. So this is a better comparison in terms of model by model because these two compete in a kind of same market. Land Cruiser is supposed to be a little bit more expensive and a little bit more premium, but the prices are actually pretty close to each other, and therefore you might consider both of these vehicles when you're shopping for a SUV from Toyota. So let me do my full engineer's audit and quality check and a full review of these two vehicles, and let's see which one I like better. Let's go. Welcome back. So I have right here the Land Cruiser versus the 4Runner. And in the past, you might not have considered that because in the previous model, the Land Cruiser was really expensive, right up there with the Lexus LX pricing. But they lowered the price, as you know, for 2024. So now it's in the kind of same category or same pricing point. And so you might consider buying the Land Cruiser if you're shopping for 4Runner and vice versa. And I'm here to tell you which one might be better overall in terms of value, in terms of performance, and also quality check as well. Keep in mind that they're both built in Japan, but Land Cruisers are actually built in two different factories in Japan. It's either the Hamura plant, which is just outside Tokyo, or it's also built in Tahara plant, where most of the Lexuses are built. Mine happens to be built in Hamura, but as I've shown you before in my previous videos, this one seems to be slightly better made than the one that's made in Tahara plant, which surprised me. But in the case of 4Runners, all of them are built in the legendary Tahara plant, a factory that I love so much because it probably is the best factory in the world. And the workers there, the engineers and staff, all of them are absolutely top-notch. And so let's see if I can actually tell the difference between these two in terms of the exterior quality, and of course we'll do the interior check as well. But first, the 4Runner, let's measure the gap here. So this is 3mm here. And for some reason it gets pretty narrow here at 2.9mm, but alignment is perfect. Even here, which is really hard to get it right, looks perfect. The similar area in the Tacoma, not quite the same as the 4Runner, definitely better in the 4Runner here. We got 3.1mm there, 3.1 again, and a bit wider at 3.2mm. So gaps are pretty consistent. And if I recall from my previous 4Runners, prior to the new model, it's about the same. Here I think was 3mm here and maybe 3.1. But you know what? It's within a couple percentage points, so it's almost identical to the previous version of the 4Runner. And Land Cruiser is also pretty similar. It's 3.1mm there, 3mm here, 3.1mm, almost identical, right? 3mm and a bit wider again at 3.2. So you know what? The two are within 2 or 3 percentage points. I would consider both to be really about the same. I call it a tie. Although when it comes to, let's say, a paint job, I would say on the 4Runner it looks a little bit better, but it's also because this car is dirty right now and this one just got washed, so obviously it looks nice. But you can really tell that the gloss and the deep finish looks great in this beautiful red color. The metallic really shows through versus on my Hamura belt one. Because it's a beige color, it doesn't pop as much in terms of color. So again, paint job is similar, but if I have to pick one, I would say the Tahara belt 4Runner has a slightly better paint. I still do think overall the paint job and overall quality looks better than the Tacoma model, which is built in Mexico. Nothing wrong with the vehicles built in Mexico, but if you were to compare this 4Runner to a Tacoma, I think the overall quality is better on the 4Runner. But between these two, almost identical. What about the interior? Let's take a look. All right, so let's step into the 4Runner first. As you can tell, it's all new inside. It's very similar to the interior from the Toyota Tacoma model, although some components have changed. For example, in this Platinum, you get this kind of unusual finish. I'm not sure what Toyota was thinking, but I'm not really crazy about this kind of plasticky finish that doesn't really add to the overall look. They could have added some really subtle wood finish or a granite look or something that's more in alignment with the Platinum model, because this is a flagship model. So a bit weird, but aside from that, overall quality is really good. Thankfully we got soft materials here, and this one's a Platinum, so it's got a kind of very dark deep blue seat. which looks good. It doesn't distinguish itself so much from the black panel. Would have preferred like a tan or brown interior. I think would have looked more beautiful. But you do get hard plastic here, like all 4Runners, and there's lots of hard plastic. So again, I don't know that it looks expensive. It doesn't really look like a platinum model to me. I really wish that they did more along the lines of the Tundra and the Sequoia capstone look with a mixed color and the brighter colors. That would have looked much better. But of course, the quality is first rate. Nothing is out of place. I can do my punch test. It's solid. Here is pretty solid too. A little bit loose plastic. But being a Tahara belt, I have no doubt that it will be reliable and it will be solid all the way through for many years to come. Otherwise, it's again very similar to Tacoma, so functionality wise it's great. You have big buttons here for HVAC control, radio button is easy to reach, digital dash, much bigger screen, which is a welcome compared to before, and even low compartment, it's actually pretty big as well, and it's got a really good stitching here, and the seats are actually very comfortable. I'll show you the back a little bit later on, and I'll show you against my Land Cruiser. But overall, I'm happy with the interior. Let's take a look at the Land Cruiser and see what the difference might be. Alright, so I'm now in the Land Cruiser. This is the one I own, and I don't know that it looks a lot more expensive, but it does look a little bit more business-like, I think, because all the materials are soft actually. A little bit hard plastic here, but this dash is nice and soft. A really nice texture here. You have a smaller screen, 12.3 inches versus the 14-inch, the 4Runner. Still 12.3 inches over here. Rows of buttons and switches, so that's all good. The radio button is kind of weird because it's right here. It looks very added on, and in fact I know for a fact that the engineer decided to add this later on, so it's a bit tacky over here, but overall I think it looks a bit more business-like. I do like the interior design better, and the quality of materials looks better too, so it does feel a little bit more upscale. Also very important, I get a proper grab handles here on the driver's side. I don't get it on the 4Runner, only on the passenger side, and it's the same on the Tacoma. I still don't understand why they didn't put that in. I'm sure it's a cost reduction thing, but it doesn't make any sense not to put this on the driver's side. But that's the case it is for the 4Runner. Thankfully we have it in a Land Cruiser. Otherwise, the quality of the Land Cruiser, I would say the same as the 4Runner. I can't really say one looks better or the other. It's more of a personal decision, and in terms of which one you like. It's obviously a little bit more functional on the 4Runner because the screens are bigger. But for me, just sitting from a driver's side, I like the look and the feel of the Land Cruiser better, and just the overall layout seems simpler and more clean. And I don't have that tacky plastic trims that I see on the 4Runner. So good design overall, but in both cases, if you compare it to the new Nissan Armada, well, it's a huge difference. That car is not that much more expensive than the Land Cruiser, but it looks substantially better in terms of interior, in terms of quality, fit and finish and everything. It looks more expensive. So again, it's one thing that I really wish that Toyota would change in the future, which is to just upgrade the look and the feel, to make it more upscale, to meet the standards set by other automakers such as Honda and Nissan, because they all kind of moved up upscale and their interior looks fantastic. Now let me do a quick comparison on the back seat and the cargo area, and then we'll go for a drive. Okay, so now I'm sitting inside the 4Runner, but in the rear seat here, and it's actually pretty comfortable, but I'm a little bit surprised with the legroom. This is subjectively speaking anyway, but with the seats in the front set to my height, I'm a 5'8", I feel like there's not a lot of legroom, especially compared to the previous gen 4Runner, which had a huge amount of legroom. That was almost like a limousine in the back. And also this seat is not adjustable forward and backward like it used to be. So there's some limitation due to the battery from the hybrid system sitting in the back, so that limits everything. And of course the seats do fold, but they tumble instead of just laying flat like it used to be. So that's also a complaint that a lot of people have. But the backrest here is still adjustable this way. And the seats are comfortable though. And I do like this dark blue seat with the orange stitching under sunlight. It looks actually quite nice. But in terms of practical things, it's not as roomy as you think. Let's take a look at the trunk in the back. So I'm on the back of the 4Runner. Of course, the biggest difference between the 4Runner and the Land Cruiser is actually the rear window here, which still rolls down, and that's a beautiful thing that they didn't change. I'm really glad they kept that feature for the new 4Runner. On the Land Cruiser, it flips up, which is actually totally fine too, but a lot of people like the roll down windows. So again, that's a really important feature. They both are hybrid, so you can tell that this has to go up. There's a storage here where you can kind of open the top here. This is actually loose piece, but you do get decent space, and it's carpeted as well. And if you come to the Land Cruiser for a moment, it's kind of messy in the back. Obviously it's carpeted with, I have a Land Cruiser mat here as well, but the storage space is small, just a tiny bit in the back. Otherwise, the depth and so forth, it's about the same, a little bit bigger on a 4Runner, just by a tiny amount. But in terms of usability, space-wise, give or take, is about the same. And of course, the Land Cruiser in Asia and elsewhere have a third seat option, so you can get that. Same thing for the 4Runner, you can get a third seat option, but not on the hybrid models, because hybrid again has the battery that takes up space in the back. Now let me take a look at the back seat of the Land Cruiser. And also, before I do that, just keep in mind that on the 4Runner, because this is the Platinum, it does have the electric step here, which is really nice. I've had that in my previous 4Runner, which was a night edition I had, and I really like this. So this is only available on the 4Runner Platinum, not available on anything else, and not available on the Land Cruiser as well. But let's take a look at the back seat. I'll hop on from the other side. So now I've gone back to my Land Cruiser rear seat. The front seat is still adjusted to my height. You know what, give or take is same. I don't know it's much difference. The contour of the seat might make a bit of a difference, but it's about the same amount of space, same amount of headroom. And if I'm sitting down, the comfort level and the seat cushioning feels about the same. I really cannot say one is better than the other. Again, the biggest difference is that the rear window rolls down on the 4Runner. It doesn't roll down on my Land Cruiser, but it does flip up, which for me is totally fine. I don't need the roll down rear window, but it is a special feature of the 4Runner. But the most important thing is coming up now, which is the driving feel between these two. They have the exact same powertrain, same transmission, identical TNGA-F platform. For all intents and purposes, from an engineering perspective, the two vehicles are actually very similar and almost identical in terms of powertrain and mechanical things. So let's go for a drive, because they do feel a little bit different on the road, and let me tell you what the differences might be. So I've hopped into the 4Runner now, and this is where the biggest difference might be. The two vehicles, the Land Cruiser and the 4Runner, looks very similar on paper, and in terms of basic specification, they are identical, whether it's the TNGA-F platform or the powertrain. But for some reason, they managed to refine the 4Runner, I think, better than the Land Cruiser, especially the 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine with a hybrid feels better in the Toyota 4Runner, which seems strange, right? Because Land Cruiser is a premium model above and beyond the 4Runner, so it should behave actually better. But in the case of the 4Runner versus my Land Cruiser, this one feels better. The engine is smoother, the calibration is much better. It feels more like a V6 engine in a basic feel compared to my Land Cruiser, which feels raspy. A lot of people complain about that on the Land Cruiser because it's loud, it's a bit noisy. When you come to a slowdown, it downshifts abruptly and it's not very well calibrated. But they've done a great job on the 4Runner. I said the same thing on Tacoma too, because the 2.4 turbo hybrid in Tacoma also feels better as well. But in this particular iteration, it is the best version of this 2.4 hybrid. It's just super smooth, and I would even say that it kind of feels like a naturally aspirated V6 engine. They've done a much better job of mimicking it. So if I step on the gas like this, transmission shifts beautifully, engine feels good. I actually enjoy driving this 2.4, but I don't enjoy driving it in the Land Cruiser. I really wish that they will apply the learning from the 4Runner and apply it to the Land Cruiser, because obviously they've done something different, and the basic calibration and maybe the engineering are not the same between the Land Cruiser and the 4Runner. So I love the application of the 2.4 turbo hybrid in this 4Runner, and I even like the a basic 2.4 without the hybrid on the other 4Runners as well, because I drove that a few weeks ago and I'll drive again next week, and I feel like even that 2.4 feels better than some other 2.4s from the past. So I can tell that Toyota keeps improving and doing Kaizen, which means continuous improvement, and is most noticeable in the new 4Runners. Now, I will say the steering is pretty similar though. The two are about the same. They're both pretty light and not all that communicative, but also at the same time good handling. So if you compare it to the old 4Runner which had a terrible handling, and it's really kind of scary almost if you're driving on the highway, kind of twisty road and all that stuff, because it loses composure. But on the new 4Runner, it stays flat. It's well controlled. I can really feel what's going on underneath the vehicle. So the basic platform and the engineering of the chassis, absolutely first class. I would say though, compared to Land Cruiser, it's not as much difference. They both feel pretty similar. I wish both of them had a slightly heavier steering and a little bit more communicative steering. But in terms of agility, in terms of basic handling and also the cornering, the 4Runner is much better than before, and between the 4Runner and the Land Cruiser, it's about the same. I wouldn't say one is much better than the other. Suspension-wise, they both have a slightly different tires. I have a Michelin LTX on the Land Cruiser. I have Dunlop street tires on this 4Runner, and they both feel about the same. Suspension feels about the same. I would say the 4Runner seems to absorb the shocks a little bit better when you go over bumpy road, but not a significant difference. We're talking about less than 5% difference in terms of suspension feel. The quietness, about the same, but once again, this engine produces less sound, and it seems a little bit quieter than the Land Cruiser, which surprised me. So overall, if I were to just pick the two cars based on driving feel, I would definitely pick the 4Runner with the hybrid system over the Land Cruiser. The application of the basic powertrain and the chassis is better engineered, better calibrated, and just feels better. Even the ride feels a little bit smoother. So let's hop into Land Cruiser for final calibration and comparison to see if I noticed anything else that's different between the Land Cruiser and the 4Runner. Alright, so I hopped into my Land Cruiser now, and like I said, they both feel similar, but the powertrain is again different in terms of feel. I can confirm it right now because I'm driving back and forth between the two models. And you know, I think they tried too hard to make the Land Cruiser's version of the Turbo 4 feel really peppy, so it's more aggressive, like the acceleration curve is more aggressive. So when you step on the gas, the torque comes on right away. And maybe that's their idea of trying to make it feel sporty, because obviously we used to have V8 engine in the Land Cruiser before, and now it's a 4-cylinder, so they want to make sure that people can feel the acceleration and the power and the torque. But as a result, it doesn't feel smooth, and there's a bit of a fake engine sound, I think, that's piped in through the speaker, and it just kind of feels cheap and raspy and doesn't feel right in the Land Cruiser. I really think that they should recalibrate the engine on this one, because it's probably the biggest flaw of the Land Cruiser in terms of the driving feel. The engine doesn't quite feel right. It's peppy and torquey, there's no worries about that, but they gotta go back to the drawing board and re-engineer and recalibrate and retune everything to do with the powertrain, including the transmission, to make it feel more like the 4Runner, which is better, especially when I come down to a stop like this. It didn't happen right now, but you often kind of downshift and there's a kind of clunky noise as it slows down, and it feels really strange. The steering, actually, now that I'm driving two back-to-back, I think it's a bit lighter on the Land Cruiser compared to 4Runner. So I would say I prefer the 4Runner's feel, even though it's not a huge difference. Both steering feels too light, both are not to my liking, but overall, I would say the 4Runner feels a little bit better. So what can I say as a conclusion? Well, for about the same price, I would say the Land Cruiser has a kind of a bit more premium feel in terms of design. I like the exterior design better. I like the branding associated with Land Cruiser, and it's a very special thing to own a Land Cruiser, of course. But if I'm just judging based on performance, based on driving character and so forth, the 4Runner is better in almost every possible way. It is a little bit more fun to drive, a bit better steering feel, better tuning of the engine and the transmission. Even the ride is slightly better as well, and it is a bit cheaper, not by much, but a little bit cheaper than Land Cruiser. At the end of the day though, you might decide based on design and styling and the look and feel of the inside and exterior. And from that perspective, the Land Cruiser still looks more premium, looks more expensive, looks like Land Cruiser, looks amazing. And so some people will still stick with the Land Cruiser versus the 4Runner. So let me know in the comments below what you think, because this is quite an important comparison between the Land Cruiser and the 4Runner. Two models that I loved a lot, two models that I've owned in the past as well. And it's kind of really fun for me to do this comparison, and I'm curious as to what you think and which one you like better and which one you would buy if given the choice. I hope you enjoyed my video. Please give me a thumbs up and make some comments, and if you haven't done so yet, would you kindly subscribe, because so many of you guys watch my videos but are not subscribers. So I would really appreciate it if you can subscribe. Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.